A very good morning to you. Welcome along to Tuesday morning's OTB AM. And I'm delighted to say Andy Lee is here with us before he jets off to the big fight this weekend.
Yeah.
Not a bad lifestyle, Andy.
Yeah, I'm surprised myself. Yeah, I got a call last week from the BBC. I'll be doing the commentary live for BBC 5 Live, so...
Cool.
Yeah, delighted.
Yeah?
Yeah.
The best seats in the house?
Yeah, that's just the only way to experience a good fight. Like, you know, is be there. I've been to so many of these big events, and unless you're ringside, you might as well be at home.
Yeah.
You might as well be at home watching on TV.
Because, I mean, it depends on the quality of... They show replays, do they? Some sports have a strict no replay in case the whole crowd
they
goes
will.
mental.
Sometimes they do, depending on the atmosphere and the occasion, yeah.
Yeah. I've often found that being ringside, though, you're kind of looking up at the fight. It's like right there.
Yeah, it's a different perspective. It's a different perspective. You spend a lot of time looking at the feet. But it's a great insight to fights, and you see the little intrinsic things they're doing.
Yeah.
That separate them from the average boxer.
The footwork kind of, especially.
It comes all from the feet.
And so, you would have done some commentary while you were fighting?
Little bits, little bits.
Did you find it useful, or was it like a kind of... you can't take lessons, you can't kind of see extra stuff from that angle, can you?
I guess you can. It gives you, it gives you some sort of insight to the pundits, in a way. It's an intoxicating thing being asked your opinion all the time, you know? And then you can see how these guys, like, gather these egos when they're being asked their opinion all the time about fighting, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes they can lose the respect, I guess. I've always seen that these guys... Now, I'm not one who believes that if you've never done the sport, you don't have the right to have an opinion. I think sometimes not having done the sport gives you an extra insight, you know? But sometimes people lose sight of themselves, or lose their own themselves. I can see that.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of pundits, especially when it comes to a sport like boxing, because it is such a physical and like a sport which takes a lot of courage, you know, and bravery. So you can't just rubbish somebody for trying.
So the pundits can overreact to a bad performance, or they begin to question the character of a fighter as opposed to actually...
They take the personal slant instead of separating the actual performance from the person.
Yeah.
But hey, it's a big story.
But it's interesting because I think that in the coverage of Joe Schmidt today, for example, there's a real sense that we don't actually know how much work he does. We don't know what the physical and mental and emotional toll of being entirely responsible for the fortunes of a nation's rugby future, how that weighs on people. Like, we just accept it. Oh, he must like his job because he loves it.
It's part of the remit. It's part of his job, yeah. Well, the expectancy around the Irish rugby team, it just seems to grow and grow with each match, especially with the success.
Yeah.
And it must take its toll. It must. And it's interesting. What are your thoughts on the whole situation? Do you think Andy Farrell is a good man to steady the ship?
I think the whole point of having a succession plan is that you use it. And so they clearly had earmarked Farrell from a while back as somebody...
Succession plans.
Well, there you go.
It's all that seems to be the buzzword.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Opinion is divided on the Stephen Kenny appointment and whether or not the right thing to do is to call time on Mick McCarthy's tenure. I don't really see the issue that people have with it. Like,
in theory, it kind of makes sense, and it's a good plan. But there's so many variables that could go wrong along the way.
And you know what? If
it just means like if it all goes bad, they've kind of shot themselves in the foot by announcing this plan. If they just appointed the two managers and said nothing and said this is a 2-year plan for each of them, and there is an opportunity if things that Stephen Kenny might take over, but by laying out the plan the way they have, it seems like they're setting themselves up to fail if it doesn't go right.
A couple of things, right? Say things go well. Apparently this is a problem.
Yeah, I know.
Apparently it's a problem if things go well.
You can't win. If you do, you can't win if you do, you can't win if you don't.
But it's also a problem if it goes badly wrong, in that there is somebody waiting in the wings for the... I'm like, well, that's a good thing, right? You've got somebody on the books.
It makes sense because it'll give Stephen Kenny the international experience of working within the setup.
And just seeing what the logistics are and what your...
McCarthy can take us, which he should do, take us to the Euros. But I don't know. I don't know Mick McCarthy. He seems like a really nice man and a sensible guy and a man of integrity. But what has he done to earn this position? But do media and put himself about a little bit. You know, you get fired from Ipswich. Does that get you the Ireland job?
I don't know.
Like we can. He's done great in the past.
Yeah.
You know, him and Jack Charlton are probably level in terms of achievement.
I think Jack Charlton's a good bit ahead of him.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Okay.
I would argue. I don't know. I think that Mick's biggest, you know, the whole thing in professional sport, your availability is your best ability. Mick was available. Like,
but for 2.1 million, is it, or 2.2 million?
1.2 per annum, so 2 million between now and the Euros, and potentially.
Who else could we get in the world for that money? You could probably get a high caliber.
I think you probably
not
could.
that Mick McCarthy's not.
I
there
think
probably are other options. But anyway, let's just see how it plays out. You know.
Yeah.
It's an interesting, and in theory, it's a great plan.
I don't think there's any failure built into it either. Like, 'cause if we do really well, and Mick wants to stay on, and they have an argument at that point, well, that's an argument to have.
How do they decide it?
I don't know. I guess at that point you say, well, Mick has decided he wants to stay on for 2 years. Stephen, we really like what you're doing. We want you now to move up from the under-21s to be a part of the backroom team or something. Or maybe you fudge it, maybe you don't. But if at that point you decide Mick McCarthy is the greatest manager of all time, if we win the Euros and he decides he wants to stay...
What's the feeling like from Kilban and from the guys who know kind of the inside side? Do you think Mick is the right man?
I think there's been fairly universal support from his former players, that team. I haven't seen anybody who played under him say he's the wrong man for the job at the moment. And I think...
He would know all the players. He would have worked with a lot of the... Would he have worked with some of the current side?
Probably not. A few of them at club level.
Yeah.
Probably not too many of them. But if you have to pay off Stephen Kenny in 2 years...
It's a good result.
I mean, something has gone horribly right.
Stephen Kenny's an interesting man.
Really interesting man.
Yeah, an intelligent man.
And like injecting him into Irish football culture, that's not a bad thing, is it?
No, and I think it's a progressive move, especially in terms of the League of Ireland as well. It's seeing that there's that pathway for other managers if they be as successful as him.
Yeah. All right. Let's tell you what's coming up. We're going to bring the sports pages in just a minute. Daniel Harris is going to join us at 8:05. He's making the case that Eric Cantona is the greatest player in Premier League history. It's an interesting case to make. We'll talk about that with Daniel around about 8:05. We'll also obviously talk about the Champions League and where we are in the sliding scale of expectation that Jose Mourinho is going to be fired any day now. Maybe it's the end of the season. Who knows? It always seems imminent and then it disappears for a week or two and then it's imminent again. So we'll see if that light is the end of a tunnel or an approaching train when we talk with Daniel around about 8:05. Ryan Burnett's going to join us on Skype for his first interview since that awful look that he suffered when defending his title and basically slipped a disc in his back and had to retire in the middle of that fight. Obviously he lost the belt because of the circumstances, but we'll talk to him about that around about 8:20. Ray Moylette's going to join us in studio around about 10 to 9. Big fight for him in Mayo, big opportunity for himself to kind of try and catapult himself up the rankings, and then we'll talk about Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury as well. So it's basically a boxing special with a bit of Manchester United thrown in. Time for the papers.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
Interesting dichotomy in the papers today. So the Examiner's front page is the perfect offload. Why Farrell to succeed Schmidt is a shrewd bit of business. So the rugby lads do it. It's a great plan. The soccer lads do it. It's like, wow, what a share of jokers.
Well,
I mean, sorry, I'm not saying that that's what the indoor is saying, but there's a general kind of sense out there that like can't do right for doing wrong.
Yeah.
Can't do wrong for doing right.
Maybe it's because this plan with Farrell, he's been in place.
Yeah, it's been a long-term plan. Definitely, that's a good point.
Yeah, but yeah, it's pretty much across all the papers today, the two succession plans.
Yeah. Interesting from the Independent here, they say that Lancaster's in demand as Farrell takes Ireland job. So Rory O'Connor has the story that there's interest from Bath in Stuart Lancaster. The English clubs are all about to get a massive injection of cash because they're selling a percentage of the league to a venture capital fund. So there's going to be an influx of money. At the same time, like Bath churn through coaches quite quickly, and I don't know, it would be brilliant for Irish rugby to keep Stuart Lancaster in the system if that was possible. Kenny, we must change the way we think about football, which is, I guess, for me, this is the biggest win here. It's that the outlook that Stephen Kenny has on life and the sense of what he thinks Ireland can be and the football that we can play, having that be part of the conversation all the time, as opposed to Trapattoni was like, these guys, you know, they're not champions. Even Martin O'Neill coming and saying, look, we just don't have the players at the moment. Stephen Kenny's like, the ball's the ball. Let's try and keep it. Let's try and be creative.
And he says in one of the papers here, I'm just was looking for it. If you play an attacking, attractive style of football, that the players will follow you and believe in it, and they'll get behind what you're trying to do. And how, like, in terms of sport is all about confidence. No matter what sport it is, if you're a confident player or performer, whatever it will be, you will play well and perform well. And if you're the man at the top is undermining you from the start, what kind of confidence does that give you?
Yeah.
So I think it has to come from the top. The message has to come from the top. And Stephen Kenny, I've met him a few times at different kind of events, and he's a very thoughtful and a very intelligent man, you know, and kind of understated in a sense, you know, not a loud mouth and not one that would. But you could see there's a substance to him, you know.
Oh yeah,
an underwritten guy, kind of,
and really ambitious as well. One of the things that comes in the pieces today is that he was at the Ireland-Denmark game at the Aviva, and I don't know if everybody remembers, but like the 10 minutes before kick-off, the anthems and all that stuff beforehand was like hair on the back of your neck stuff. It was amazing.
This is the one
we got hammered eventually. Yeah. But like pre-game, there's this real sense that this is what the Aviva could be like when it's full and when everybody's together and everybody's unified, and then obviously it falls apart. But he says pre-game that night he was with a couple of his kids, wandering around, having a bit of food, just kind of sensing the absolute anticipation. And he decided that night, I want to manage Ireland.
Right.
And you're like, well, you're going to get there at some point. Fingers crossed if everything works out. I don't know. It's not a very Irish thing to go, I want that thing, I'm going to go and get it, and I'm going to do everything I can to get it.
No, but he hasn't come out and he's worked quietly and let his performances as a manager do the talking.
Yeah.
And that's an Irish thing, you know. But it's great to have that ambition, I think. I think everyone will have those ambitions, you know, whatever, like, personally and quietly, but it's nice to hear.
I think that's dead right, and I think that like having somebody like that from within Irish football culture rising to the top is actually only going to be good for us. So look, I can see why people might have some issues with the succession planning and the way it's been announced, but ultimately if it is the right thing in the long run...
You're on board.
Well, tentatively, right? Tentatively.
Fast forward to 2 years. I knew that was a bad plan. I said from the start that was a bad plan.
Oh, I'm definitely not going to do that. I think if it fails, it won't be because of Stephen Kenny. Kenny, Irish players will respect me, because obviously there was question marks about, you know, who would get the most respect on day one, whether or not it would be Mick McCarthy or whether or not it would be Stephen Kenny. And I mean, maybe that was an issue. Kev said that, like, certainly immediately there will be a galvanising impact on the players from having Mick McCarthy walk in, whereas with Stephen, a lot of the English-based players would have been like, what's the story of this guy? Who is he? You know, there would have been reserving
Surely
judgment.
that's initial. That's only in the first meeting or the first few days. But by seeing what you do on the training ground and how progressive your ideas are,
yeah,
that's where you gather the respect. Respect is earned, it's not given, you know. And who knows how it will play out. If the lads go out and Mick McCarthy's training, you know, he's training from a bygone era, that respect won't be long dissipating, you know?
No, I 100% agree with that.
Because that was some of the comments. Was it Matt Doherty who said that training under O'Neill and Keane, I'd never seen it before. It was old, you know?
Yeah, old school.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't work on shape, we played a bit of football and that was it.
Yeah.
And
so the players are judging all the time, I guess.
Yeah. I'm fully agree with that.
And it's kind of like they're kind of like precious little these beings who have to, like, precious footballers have to kind of be, they're a different animal, you know. They're not a normal human where, like, if anybody walks in as a sports person or and you meet them, this is your boss now. You got to respect them, but why football is any different? Why should they get us like
a dispensation?
Especially
for being a bit of an asshole.
Yeah, exactly.
I would agree with that. I think that you can understand the first second that it happens, that's going to happen. Mick has a little bit of grace period, whereas Stephen Kenny doesn't have any grace period. But like the second, third training session, they're like, "Oh, this is actually pretty good. I'm interested in this," you know. And then, so a lot of people are talking about it's an issue that he won't be able to be at the training sessions for the senior team, but that's not his job either. Like, I wouldn't expect him to be at the training sessions kind of going, "Oh, geez, Mick, I wouldn't have done that."
Yeah,
that wouldn't work. So it's actually not an issue. I don't think
I don't think so either.
I'd say he has his own ideas on how training should be run at this point. It's more about what is the ebb and flow of the international season, like how many games you need to get to, how realistic is it?
Preparing a team who you only get to see for short periods of time,
yeah.
I would say, and the travel as well, and working with a team within that, you know, that structure.
And so, I don't know, it's like, it seems to work in other sports. Why can't it work for us? So the Irish Times is obviously leading with the rugby this morning. Eyebrows raised over Schmidt's clear intention to finish coaching. When the news was finally confirmed yesterday morning, it was sad, if inevitable, says Jerry Thornley. The day had to come eventually, and the man himself had prepared us for it. By far the most jarring aspect of Joe Schmidt's decision to step down as head coach was the heading under the IRFU press release, which read, "Joe Schmidt decides to finish coaching after Rugby World Cup 19. Maybe that's it. Maybe he is going to say, "I've reached the pinnacle in my sport. I have all this information, and I'm going to dispense it somewhere else, like underage rugby in New Zealand." Or that's one aspect. The other is that immediately he's been linked with the Australia job, every job in France, every job in England, and it's like the Lions job.
What's an acceptable time frame or period of time for you for him to come back?
Like, he can come back 6 weeks after the World Cup if he wants, because ultimately people make decisions and they change their minds, and that's fair enough. Like, at the same time, you can see that it'd be a waste of his coaching talent if he never coaches again.
Yeah,
that would make no sense.
Maybe he's burnt out. Maybe it's too much. But I'm sure, being the man he is and the success he's had, that there will be innumerable amount of opportunities for him in other walks of life. Who knows? Maybe you got to take him at his word for now.
Oh, totally. I absolutely. But at the same time, you can see a situation where New Zealand win the World Cup under Steve Hansen. He stays on for a year and decides, okay, I'm going to move upstairs to a director of rugby role, and Joe is the new attacking coach or the new head coach of the All Blacks, and nobody bats an eyelid. They're like, fair enough.
But even if he had said, if he had announced yesterday that after the World Cup I'm going to take over the New Zealand job or work within the New Zealand team and structure in some way, would it have been much uproar?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think everyone respects him for what he's done for Irish rugby.
Yeah, there was some sense that they couldn't be seen to be taking the job while coaching against.
Yeah,
but like,
does it really matter? It's not. I don't like. It wouldn't change your opinion. Like, it wouldn't change his approach, I guess.
No, and it definitely wouldn't change your opinion either. It's like,
no,
this guy.
It'd make an interesting dynamic if it did happen, but it wouldn't. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I would, like, obviously, we owe him a debt of gratitude for what he's done.
He's been pretty good.
Yeah.
He's been pretty good. So. What have you got in the tabloids?
Across the whole, all of them, there's the Irish Daily Star here. I'm the gaffer. Kenny insists he'll manage no matter if Mick's successful or not, that he's going to step in after 2020. So Damien Duff quoted it here as well, saying that he's unsure, that I find it strange, a bit mad. FAI Chief Executive John Delaney says his new pathway vision, hopefully it's a masterstroke, but we'll see. There are so many what ifs. What if Mick does amazingly well, gets us to the Euros, to the quarters, semis, or the finals? He has to stay on. That's what we spoke about at the top of the show, you know, it's just... Well,
at that point you pay off Stephen Kenny and you go, or you don't. Mm. I mean,
well,
what's the likelihood of us reaching the finals?
I'm hoping we qualify.
Yeah.
You know,
I know when we qualify, we have the games in Dublin.
That's it. Yeah.
Let's see
Be part of it.
how well this group of players can do at that point.
So just like after the League of Nations, I'm kind of detached. What's the pathway now for Ireland to qualify?
Well, so the draw will be made on the 2nd of December. At that stage, we'll be in the group, and you've got to finish in the top 2 in the group.
Okay.
And if you do that, you qualify. But we're more than likely going to be in a playoff. We can lose every game.
Third place playoff.
No, we can lose every game in the qualifiers, and because of the way the Nations League works, there's also like a backdoor system where all the teams who qualify get sucked out of that, and what's left is this remnant of crap teams, and we should at least, by virtue of the fact that we were in
that bracket,
in that second tier of teams.
Story about Steve Staunton has emerged as a shock candidate to replace Stephen Kenny at Dundalk.
That would be a shock. That would be a shock.
It'll be interesting. It seems like he's been out of football. His last role as a manager was in League 2 with Darlington, 2009 to 2010. He left the club after they were at the bottom of the table. So,
yeah, been a while.
But it seems like he's doing good work in England, work with underage players who have been released from clubs and helping them rehabilitate and stuff. So,
okay.
I don't know.
It's suddenly one of the best jobs in Irish football.
Yeah.
Well, it's obviously the best job.
Well, they're in a
Irish
great
football
position
beyond the international team, but it's become a stepping stone. They've got loads of money. They have a good playing squad. Their facilities obviously need an upgrade, but you can see that there's a lot of people who are suddenly interested in that gig going, ooh, the American owners have a bit of cash as well. So,
what else? Got the Sun Sport again. As one chapter ends, another one up begins. Joe, it's time to go. Kenny, I can't wait. I can wait, it says. And it's pretty much across the board, all the tabloids. Same headline here. Merispot. I can't wait. Little pun there. Stephen, I'm taking over August 2020, and that's final. It's in writing. So hopefully, it seems like he's got assurances within his contract that no matter what way it goes, win, lose or draw.
Yeah, I'm sure there's
the manager.
I'm sure, worst comes to the worst, there's always we can buy you out of that contract. It's just,
money's not always the answer, Joe. And I don't think Stephen Kenny's a man who would, when you speak about like his desire to manage the Irish team
no,
after
it's a real
the game,
thing.
like
yeah.
I don't know if there'd be a price he'd put on it.
No, but if they decide that they want to keep Mick, right?
Yeah.
There's just you just pay up the value of the contract. Like, I mean, it's an expensive insurance policy, but it doesn't really feel like it's an insurance policy. It feels like it's a proper succession plan.
I remember reading it. I can't remember the actual figures, but I was reading at Tommy Conlon on Sunday in the Irish Independent. He was talking about John Delaney and how the rugby, like the RFI, is RFI? Yeah. And the GAA, how they've grew in the last 10 years and the amount of profit they've garnered, where in the FAI, it's only been, I think they've had a gain of 2 million per year in that 10 years. And how John Delaney is the highest paid executive in European football. You know, it's what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about that?
I think that the FAI have been coming off a lower base in terms of the profitability, but they haven't monetised the product. They haven't grown the league in a way that they should have done. There hasn't been a focus on the League of Ireland the way there should have been. That's been clear that the success that Dundalk have had has come in spite of the FAI, and the success that they had should have been the example for everybody else to follow. And the league should have been the thing that they invested most of their time and money in, because if we had a league that was self-financing and was run properly, then there wouldn't only be Stephen Kenny who would be a candidate who you could kind of say, oh, this guy should be involved, and the managers of the underage teams should be like looking to get League of Ireland jobs, so that it's a springboard for them, and it becomes a springboard for players' careers, for football as like a product and as a pastime and as a passion point for fans. But so I think that the FAI definitely needs to start concentrating on that a bit. There was one final story that we wanted to bring up from the Mayo News. If we got a clip from this or the back of this, the Mayo News have an exclusive this morning that Andy Moran is coming back for another season. So not entirely unexpected, I suspect, given that James Horan was coming in and that they want to batten down the hatches and make one last charge. I mean, you have to love the Mayo footballers, right?
Yeah, but he's a class player, and experience is invaluable, I guess. Especially under a different coach, he would need probably someone just to be a bridge between the two things, and a connection between the players and the coaches.
And to set the tone in training, that kind of stuff. That,
he's a class player.
That you don't actually see, that we never get to see, but it's hugely important to managers about culture and stuff.
What age is Andy Moore now?
35, I think. Is that right? Is that what it says? Yeah, 35. So, I mean, that's young, right?
I'm 34, so maybe I could get a game.
All right, let's move on, because we want to talk about the crazy notion that Eric Cantona was the greatest player in Premier League history. Daniel Harris, good morning to you.
Hello.
25 years ago today, Eric Cantona joined United. A few favourite bits, starting with the insouciant brilliance of this. That was a clip yesterday. And then 26 years ago today, not the greatest player in British football history, but try finding one more influential and decisive. Good luck. Definitely the greatest player in British football history, you said. So that's you updating your tweet from last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I was joking about the greatest player in British football history, but
not really. A little bit.
I was joking. He's not a better player than George Best or Ronaldo or numerous others, I suppose. But in terms of his influence, and I don't just mean all the bollocks that we hear about the class of '92. I mean, when it actually comes down to what Phil Leotardo would call brass tacks. He played in England for 6 years, I think it was. And probably what he did at Leeds in helping them win the title is overplayed, but he did win the title with Leeds that season. He then turned up at United halfway through the next season and made the difference, and they won the league. Then they won the double. Then they probably would have won the double, but for the fact that he booted Matthew Simmons. Then he came back and they won the double again, and then they won the league again, and then he retired, and then they didn't win the league. And I don't really think that anyone can compare with that, as in when he plays, they win things, and when he doesn't play, they don't win things.
Yeah, it's not bad when you draw it out like that. You were at the Crystal Palace game, Sellers Park, that night when he jumps into the crowd and kicks Matthew Simmons, were you?
Yes, I was. Yeah, I was. I guess in its way, that was a seminal moment in my teenage years where I was 15 years old trying to work out what was going on. Obviously, still have no idea, but I was at least trying to find out. And where you see someone do something like that, and it's someone like Eric Cantona, and you're already walking about school with your collars of your blazer up and 7 Cantona chalked on your back and all that kind of ludicrous behaviour, to see someone give the message that be true to yourself in every circumstance, that was quite thought-provoking and influential and inspirational in its way. And if I was picking my favourite Eric Cantona moment, despite the goals in cup finals and the goals in big games, the goals in derbies, it's definitely that one.
You're a Man United fan?
I am. I actually went to see Eric Cantona in the Olympia recently.
Oh yeah, was it any good?
He was doing a speaking tour. He did 2 nights in Olympia. It was very good. The night as a whole wasn't great, but his interview was really good, and he was funny.
Tom Dunn did the interview?
I'm not sure who the guy was. No, it was a guy from Scotland.
Okay.
And he was funny, charming, intelligent, witty, and he was asked about the kick, and he said he loved it. I loved it. I would do it again. And that's all he said. He said there's no place for hooliganism in football, and that's all he said about it. But he got a great cheer from the crowd. You know, it was really Eric Cantona appreciation.
The thing about Eric Cantona is that he is obviously cool, and I mean, he had like the moves, like the collar, the way that he carried himself, the chest, the way that he played football. And you see quite a lot of footballers like that. Like Thierry Henry was a different version of that. But the thing about Cantona was he represented some values beyond that, beyond just the value of being cool for the sake of being cool, which is itself is something that is worth something, and beyond just being good at football, where he had a view of the world where it was important to do what you felt, to rebel against authority, to tell people if they were stepping out of line. And what I guess I've kind of seen a bit more as I've grown up is the kind of left-wing politics that also is something that I hold dear to my heart, that is inspirational. And he was someone who was prepared to stand up and make those points, whether it was about the way that you should speak to people who are foreign, or whether now it's about the way that football should be organised and structured. And I mean, he did that interview recently with the Players Tribune. Was it the Players Tribune? I think it was, which is quite wide-ranging in how he sees the world and how he thinks the world should run. And again, quite inspirational. And you see it doesn't happen very often where you see sportsmen who represent something beyond proficiency at sport. But Eric Cantona was one of those people. And I think that is why you see the way that he is still revered by United fans in a way that Cristiano Ronaldo, who was the best player in the world at the time that he was at United, and also was instrumental in United winning 3 league titles in a row and a Champions League, people don't conceive of him in the same way because he's just a bloke who's good at football and perhaps guilty of some more nefarious stuff that we didn't know about at the time, but he didn't really represent very much beyond himself and footballing genius, whereas Eric Cantona represented an attitude, an approach to life, and actually some principles. And especially when you look at football now and you see no principles whatsoever, the way that he carried himself resonates even more profoundly than it did then.
Just to talk about Cantona for a minute, one of the things that seemed to resonate most was that he didn't live in a mock Tudor mansion, if memory recalls, that he was kind of in a 2 up, 2 down somewhere in an estate around Manchester. Is that right, or is that, again, part of the mythology and mythos that's been built up around him?
I'm not sure that's the case. I mean, obviously, where footballers lived in the early 90s was slightly different to where footballers live now. So he probably didn't live in somewhere outrageous just because they weren't making the kind of money at that point that enabled them to live somewhere outrageous, and particularly for him, who'd had a checkered career. So although he was sort of coming to his peak when he was at United, it wasn't like he'd been earning loads of coin prior to then, because he hadn't been playing for a bit, and he'd been at Marseille, and he'd been at Nîmes, and then he'd been at Leeds. So he hadn't just been accumulating in the way that other footballers of that time, even then, might have done. So I'm not sure he lived on an estate. That sounds fairly unlikely, and I hadn't heard that before. But it's not so much about that, like football, because one of the things that is difficult in the way that people can talk about footballers is that you often get middle-class press who are uncomfortable with and can't conceive of working-class footballers earning money. There's nothing wrong with people who are working-class, who are socialists, doing well for themselves and earning money. Like, they're allowed to enjoy their wage. The difficulty, and make the most of their talent, and the difficulty comes when people perhaps forget where they came from and lose touch with who they are and lose touch with what the priorities in their life should be. And Eric Cantona was someone no one could ever accuse Eric Cantona of doing that. And so it's not about whether he lived on an estate or in a 2 up, 2 down, or he didn't live in some ridiculous footballer's mansion somewhere in Cheshire. It's that even if he did, and it doesn't matter whether he did or not, because if he did, then he'd earn the right to do that. It's that he never forgot what was important, and he never forgot what important values are. And important values are helping people and looking after people who are in the most trouble, and never being racist, never being xenophobic, never being homophobic. It's all of those things. And that's what Eric Cantona represented. And he played football like a person who represents all of those things, who never lost touch with the supporters, and who, when all the commercialism became a bit too much, he called it a day.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was kind of the point I was making, that he lived amongst the people that he chose to represent, as opposed to putting himself behind bars in a gated community and keeping away that way. Just to go back to the football, because I think that might be a little bit underappreciated. The season he comes back from the suspension, he comes back too late to influence things. Is that right? It's the season after that where they win.
It's that season. See, he's suspended from January the 25th, 1995, until I think October the 1st, 1995. And so United lose the league to Blackburn by a goal, and they lose the cup final 1-0. And then he comes back and they chase down Newcastle. And
so 95-96 is the season he comes back from suspension, and they win like 8 or 9 games 1-0 at the end of the season, and he scores the winner in 7 or 8 of them. Is that right?
He scores. They win. They come back against QPR. Actually, the first game is they beat Newcastle 1-0 after they get pummeled in the first half. Schmeichel keeps them in it, and then Cantona scores 1-0. And that's kind of the definitive "you'll never win anything with kids" game, because that's what the season became known as "you'll never win anything with kids" season, the Alan Hansen season. But really, in the class of '92, we'll tell you this as well. That season, that championship and that double weren't won by kids; they were won by grown-ass men. Those men being Schmeichel, Cantona and Keane, and they had the class of '92 able to play around them, But without those three, United don't win anything. And it was those three who were the reason why United won what they did. But there was the Newcastle game that they won 1-0. Then they came back in the last minute. Cantona scored about 5:30 against QPR to get them a draw. And then they won 1-0 against Arsenal with Cantona scoring, Spurs with Cantona scoring. And then they beat Leeds 1-0 as well when Keane scored, when Radaby was in goal. And it took them the best part of 80 minutes to score past Lucas Radaby. But it was, and then obviously the cup final again was 1-0 in Cantona. But it was that ability that he had was timing. And when you talk about footballer having timing, you're often talking about their ability to turn up in the right place at the right time. And he had that. But what he also had was the timing that when you most need something, Cantona was that person who was able to do that. And not every player has that. And when you break him down as a player, he had most of the attributes, not really the attributes that you always associate with a number 10, in that he didn't just make nice passes, but he scored quite a lot of goals. He was great in the air, and he was also exceptional at one-on-ones.
Yeah. At the speaking event, he spoke about his relationship with Alex Ferguson and how after he'd been banned for the Kung Fu kick, he went back to France and he stayed around the training setup for a while, but then he left because he knew it was such a long ban and he thought he was going to retire. He thought he was going to walk away from it then. And he said how Ferguson travelled of his own accord and found him in France and had a dinner with him and convinced him to come back and to stay training. And when he returned to the team, he was well off the pace, he said. But Ferguson trusted him. And he played him and played him and played him and played him. And he really emphasised his respect for Ferguson during that interview, and how he spoke so highly of Ferguson and their relationship. It was really nice to hear.
When you think about it now, if somebody was to jump into the crowd and do that to a fan, the chances of them coming back to play football within a 2.5, 3, 4 year, 5 year period are pretty limited. It was a very of the moment suspension because the outcry would have been like, you can just imagine how there would be 5 weeks of hand wringing and just general outrage from people because it would be gift straight away. Everybody would see it. The whole world.
This
would be
day and
like,
age.
Yeah,
the age of outrage.
If you did it now, exactly in the age of outrage.
There was quite a lot of outrage then. In fairness, I remember the day after, like driving around with my dad and after school, and the phone-ins were about Cantona and kick him out of the country and this, that, and the other. And I mean, perhaps people would be even more outraged. Although I remember that Patrice Evra got into a rut with a fan last season, didn't he? And not that much happened. Jamie Carragher chucked a coin into a crowd a few years ago, which seemed to me like a far more dangerous thing to do and also indiscriminate.
Yeah.
That you don't know who you're going to hit. But Cantona made sure he hit the right bloke at least.
The other great... sorry, Dan. The other great thing
is that if you think about the footballers who people love the most, and not just United footballers, Diego Maradona is another one, Roy Keane, what they have is they have, aside from being really good at football, which lots of people are, they have attitude. And football is a fast, combative, compelling, confrontational game, but one that you can look really fucking cool while you're doing. And Cantona basically brought together all of those things. He brought together the workers element. He brought together football's a socialist game really as well, because it's a team game and everyone has to pull together in the same direction. Cantona represented that. It's a rebellious, revolutionary activity against what the physical body can do, what a group of people can do when you put them all together. And all of those things were encapsulated in and represented by Eric Cantona. And that's why people were so attached to him, and that's why people still sing his name now, because he did all of those things while being very good at football. And you get other people who are good at football, and it tends to be now these days, if we look at who the best players are in the Premier League, Eden Hazard, Kevin De Bruyne, David Silva, Sergio Aguero, great players, but what else do we know about them? What else is interesting about them? What else have they done in their lives apart from be brilliant at football? And all they have to do in their lives is be brilliant at football, be true to themselves, be the people that they are. But I'm not criticising them as people for that. It just doesn't make them interesting to us. And that's the difference between someone like Eric Cantona and other players. Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, Xavi. They just represent footballing brilliance rather than ideas about things beyond football.
It's funny, I don't know if anybody is allowed to represent ideas beyond their sport in any sport anymore, because you get the media training at 16 as part of your academy training, and then your agent comes in and says, don't say anything that might alienate potential sponsors or sponsors of teams you might want to go to or other teams. And suddenly it's like, well, I'm not going to say anything because it's going to cost me money. So I don't know if there's a generation of footballers who are ever going to be able to do that again, or want to do that again, or be capable of doing it again.
That's kind of true, but then you look at, like Michael Jordan said, Republicans still buy sneakers. But then you look at what Colin Kaepernick's doing and lots of other American football players, and that cost him his career. You see Juan Mata's doing his common goal thing, and somehow not one single one of his teammates has decided that they should join in with that. But there are things that you can do, and I agree, it's difficult. So, I mean, when Robbie Fowler wore his shirt in support of the Dockers, another brilliant gesture, he got into trouble with it. And it is difficult when you start bringing football into politics, except the fact that doing nothing is also a political gesture. And football is full of politics when you look at states buying football teams, and when you look at the inherent what it means when one country competes against another country, when one landmass with a border competes against one landmass with a border, that too is politics. And so I'm not criticising people that choose to stay out of politics, because they're entitled to do whatever they like. What I was saying was that people that do get involved, and the two examples from England, Eric Cantona and Robbie Fowler, people love them for it, and people love them for it with good reason, because the things that they've done are important, and they're trying to make our world a better place. And really, that's what football's about in the first place, and that's how football started, was workers trying to enjoy their lives more and creating clubs for people, for like-minded individuals to enjoy time together by doing this amazing thing called football. And
then it got ruined. Are Man United going to be okay tonight against Young Boys?
Probably. I mean, you wouldn't be surprised if they managed to make a mess of it, because they play badly so often, and particularly at home. So you're never quite sure what you're going to get. But Young Boys aren't very good, and they beat them so comfortably at home that they'd have to play exceedingly badly not to be able to get a win. So I don't know. But again, we're back in this situation with Mourinho where you're thinking, what are you looking for in your team? Because he left Lukaku out, or Lukaku got injured, whichever of the two it was, maybe both. Played Sanchez up front. They played really well against, not really well, they played pretty well against Everton. They played really well in the second half against Bournemouth. They played well for 20 minutes, half an hour against Juventus, stayed in the game and managed to beat them. And then he carried on playing those without Lukaku at Manchester City, where they got a doing, fair enough, but they were going to get a doing whoever they were played, just because City are way, way better than they are. And then he brings Lukaku back, and I'm not blaming Lukaku for United's inability to create decent chances, but it doesn't help, and it's just another example of Mourinho's not seeming to know where he's taking this team, because you take him in one direction, then someone doesn't play well for a game, and then you take them out again. And meanwhile, Matic plays badly in almost every game. He's still there. How bad can Fred be? You spend 50 million quid on someone and you don't give them an opportunity to prove that they're not worth 50 million quid. And we're seeing with Victor Lindelof, who's got injured now, and that is a problem for United. As soon as he's had a run of games, he's got better and he's stayed in the team. And Victor Lindelof had far worse experiences playing for United at the beginning than Fred had, and is a centre-back, so a position where things can go a lot more wrong than they can when you're in the middle of the midfield. But for some reason, he refuses to play Fred, is playing Matic, is playing Lukaku, the guys that he likes, and is dropping various others after 45 bad minutes, 60 bad minutes, or whatever it is. And it's not just swapping players in and out, it's swapping systems in and out, so that you never get the continuity. And at some point, he just needs to decide, this is the team I'm going to play, and just stick with them, because that will be better than the constant changes.
Daniel, great stuff. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Nice to see you again.
Daniel Harris there talking to us about the heady days of Eric Cantona being the most important footballer in England.
Well, one of the great stories that he probably forgot to mention was that great statement he gave after he did return. And he spoke about that in the Olympia, and he's, the seagulls followed the trawler, they expect fish. He said, I just made it up on the fly. And I left the press conference immediately and didn't answer any questions. And he said, when I got home, he said Roy Keane was calling me, and we were just laughing about it. So that was another cool moment for Eric.
Was that the Man United team that you fell in love with, or had you already been a Man United fan?
No, I had been a fan, yeah. I can't remember. I think he might have been in the team. I think it would have been around 92 or something, you know, when I was a kid in school.
Yeah.
All my friends supported United, so I just followed the bandwagon.
That's how it works. And then, life was great for a long time, and all of a sudden now you see what the rest of us have had to endure for.
See who the real fans are now.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, we're going to talk with Ray Moylette a little bit later on. We're also going to preview Deontay Wilder against Tyson Fury. That's coming in a couple of minutes' time. But we want to talk about one of the biggest stories in Irish boxing. And just to put a bit of context on this before we get to Ryan Burnett, Andy, he's got a remarkable backstory, an incredible sense of resilience, and then came out of difficulties that he had to eventually be able to finally begin to fulfill his potential.
Ryan has one of the most, I don't know if he's unique, but one of the most endearing stories, I guess, inspiring stories, the life he's lived, experiencing homelessness and different travails, medical setbacks, failing medicals for fights, persevering through it all and battling his way to become a world champion, double world champion. And then he steps into this big tournament. In his first fight, a fight he was winning, slightly favoured to win, in with Dominique Dene, who would probably go on to be in the Boxing World Hall of Fame. And he was winning the fight, boxing extremely well. The fight was fought at a very high level. Both guys were really on it. And I've just been watching the fight. I've watched it a few times now, and I'll have to ask him about it. But after the third round, he goes back to the corner. You can hear him say something to Adam, like, I'm not sure which punch he refers to or which hand he refers to, but he says, I can't throw it. I've pain around my waistband. And you can see he immediately comes out for the fourth round, and he's not engaging as he was in the previous rounds. And he goes to throw halfway through the round, goes to throw a right hand and pulls up. And it looks like he slipped a disc, but what I think it's been diagnosed as is he'll tell us what it's been diagnosed. I think the muscle is separated from the bone, and he's torn an oblique, an internal right oblique. So it looked very painful. It looked excruciating during the fight. He was carried out of the fight, and it's a freak ending of a fight. I've never seen a fight end like that in all my years of boxing, but it's a tough one. We'll speak to him now, but if anyone's prepared to come back from this, if anyone will rebound from this, it'll be Ryan.
Ryan Burnett, good morning to you.
Good morning, lads. How are you?
How you doing?
Christmas tree up, Ryan.
Got the Christmas tree up, looking forward to Christmas.
Yeah. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm enjoying my time off, taking it easy, resting.
How do you reflect on the fight now that it's been about a month, hasn't it, since the fight? And
yeah, it's been a month, and it's still so hard to take. I mean, I was just settling into things. I was just starting to find my range and everything. I thought that next few rounds I was going to start to take over. I was going to start upping my tempo and stuff. And it was just a freak accident. That's what they've put it down to, just a complete freak accident. And it is what it is.
Had you felt anything in training in the build-up to the fight?
No, nothing. I mean, just the normal little niggles that you would get in training, but there was nothing around my back, nothing in my stomach, nothing at all. Everything was 100%.
And I've watched the fight again last night. Was it the third round that it initially occurred?
Yeah, so right near the end of the round, I was just feeling something in my side where it just wasn't right. And any time I was throwing my right hand, I just felt as if my side was twinging a bit. So I got back into the corner and I said to Adam, look, there's something not right here. I don't know what it is, but I just feel something. And he said to me, well, go out into the next round, see how it goes. And when I went out and I threw that right hand, it just felt like someone had pulled my insides out. It was excruciating, but I said to myself, like, I'm not going to go out with a count, so I'll try to get my feet in.
I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've watched the fight a few times, and I actually think I heard you while you were slipping and moving your upper body. You're actually not screaming, but shouting with that in pain. Is that true? Like, was that right? I thought I heard you go when you were moving, simply doing a head movement.
Yeah, when I got back up off the floor and I went into the corner and he was unloading everything, I think adrenaline kept me going. But I mean, for me to move like that, the doctors had told me I just should not have been able to do it. But the injury that I have, they said you shouldn't have been able to do it. It's just fighting instinct, I suppose. And
what is the exact injury?
So they'd said that I've ripped my internal oblique. So I've completely ripped the inside muscle, and the muscle slightly come off my hip bone as well.
Wow.
So they said I'm going to be out for around about 6 months.
It's a long time. And what are you able to do now in terms of training? Or
I can't do anything. I mean, I'm sitting in the house and I'm pulling my hair out. I said to Adam, like, is there anything I can do? And he said, just simply gauge it by pain. So I went and got my bike, tried to do a bit of a cycle, but I was in agony. So I just had to put the bike in.
It's part of your body that affects everything, yeah.
I was in agony. So I'm just gonna enjoy Christmas, and then after Christmas I'm just gonna see where I am and take it from there.
I know you're in pain now, emotionally more and physically, but in the long term, it might work out. I've been like that you will get a fight with the winner of this tournament, because the nature of your loss, it doesn't reflect badly. It was a fight you're winning, and that once this tournament plays out, by then you'll hopefully be recovered and back into full health, and a shot at the eventual winner will definitely be on the cards. Is that something you're aiming for?
Yeah, definitely. We've got a lot of options on the table. I can do a lot of things now. And you know yourself, Adam's very good when it comes to this stuff. So I've simply said to Adam, look, let me enjoy Christmas, and come the new year, we'll both get our heads down. And
what weight do you think you'll be after Christmas?
Yeah, stop.
Tell me a little bit. It seems, because the tournament was a tournament, it seems kind of unfair that you have to retire injured and you don't actually get to continue being the champ. I know there's a fight at the end when you come back, but that must be a bit of a pain. It's because it just feels like there's an injustice involved. Yeah,
I mean, it's like a loss without a loss. I mean, they've took my world title off me, and I don't feel like I've been beaten. I was going to win that fight. That fight was mine. I know it was. And I'm now sitting here at Christmas without my belt, and it just feels so unfair. But I mean, this is fighting. Things happen.
It's funny because, Ryan, it's probably the best I've seen you box in those 3 rounds. Now, Burnett was dangerous, and he landed some good shots because he's a experienced champion, and it was probably as good as I've seen Burnett box in a long time. Yeah. But it was the best I'd seen you boxing. For it to happen like that, it's complete freak, and I know you must be gutted.
I mean, I'd be sitting up in my bed at night time just pulling my hair out, thinking about what just hadn't have happened. But I mean, you could go with these stories all day long. You just have to take it how it is and move on from it, and that's all there is to it.
Here's the thing, like, we've been talking about not really understanding what the life of people is like. So Joe Schmidt has just resigned, or has announced that he's stopping at the end of the World Cup, and we don't really know how much effort it takes for him to get into it. You at least have spoken before about the effort that you had to go to get medically cleared in the first place. So, you know, we know that you are somebody who gets into the science of this, who kind of understands absolutely everything you can about the condition. Are you ready to do that again? Are you like, is there still too sick in your stomach to even think about that kind of stuff just yet?
No, I think just coming with my natural fighting nature. I mean, I'm immediately, the day after the fight, I said to Adam, Brad, what are we doing here? And Adam said to me, slow down, take it easy. He just told me to take a bit of time off and just try to heal myself. So with my fighting nature, I'm ready to get this thing back and going properly.
Does that mean like reading all you can, Googling about how the whole thing works, how you build it up?
Yeah, well, I've already done it all, and there really is not much I can do apart from physio and rest up. That's all it is. Just have to let it heal itself.
I guess the only positive part about this is that this has happened to you at this point after you've become a world champion, so everybody knows the standard that you're at, as opposed to it happening in one of your first 3 or 4 fights when you were just back.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely blessed with the position that I'm in. This could have happened at the start of my career, and could have put a hold on everything. You can take so many positive things from it.
And you can look at it like this, Ryan. It was a fight you were winning and gonna win. You haven't lost your belt by being beaten. And let the rest of the division fight each other. Let them have the hard fights. You rest up, take care of your body, come back fully fit, and fight the eventual winner after he's had 3 or 4 hard fights. And then you go on and win the title, win the tournament anyway by beating him. That's the way I would look at it.
That's the plan, Andy.
Yeah.
And are you any good at passing the time? Are you getting a little bit better at being bored?
I mean, my dog hasn't been out for so many walks. And he's constantly take my dog out for a walk. When my fiancée, she goes out to work, and I just walk the dog and clean the house and have the dinner ready for when she comes in.
Right, you can come down to Dublin anytime.
Good man. Yeah.
Well, listen, one quick question about the division then. Like, what are the best fights in the division at the moment that you would like to see happening while you're out? And who do you have your eye on as somebody you think, right, I kind of hope you come through that because I want to take you?
I want Burnett to come through it because I want to get my revenge with him. I think the person everyone has their eyes on is Inu. He's a fantastic talent. I'm looking forward to Rodriguez versus Inu. I think that's going to be technically a great fight.
Ryan, just to go back to there, one thing I found not strange, but it must have been a bit awkward. Was it for you, or how was it when the fight was announced with Danair? You met for the first time, shook hands, and then you and your fiancé and him and his wife went for dinner and sat down and had a meal together, knowing that you were going to fight in a couple of months. What was that like?
I mean,
were you just like, what were you talking about?
No, we're just chatting about everything in life in general, and he really is such a nice guy. But I don't know, me being me, as we were sitting for dinner, everything was so nice and everything. But while I was looking at him, I was thinking, I just want to kill you. That's what always going through my head. I mean, he's such a nice guy and everything, and his wife's the same. But it was funny, the lead up to the fight as well. On fight week, he was everywhere I was. If I went to Nando's, he was at Nando's. If I was walking down the street, he was walking down the street. And it got to the point where we both stopped in the middle of the street and just had a conversation about how weird it was that we were both banging into each other meeting like this. And all we could have really done was laugh about it. I mean, the guy's so experienced. He doesn't need to be nasty and stuff. So that the nastiness that you see in today's boxing with people who are competing, there was none of that due to him being so mature and so experienced. And
will you ever have any of that, do you think? Do you feel that that's all complete bullshit, really?
For some fighters, they love it. For me, I learned, it was actually on the undercard of Andy's fight when he fought Peter Quillen at New York. I boxed on that card, and I was very, very aggressive. And it was sort of from that fight I realised being aggressive isn't for me. And I just stopped. I stopped being like that, and I think Danair, he's the same. So that's how we were able to go out for dinner together.
And you mentioned at the meal you were thinking, I'm going to kill you. Do you think you'll ever lose that kind of spite? Do you think you'll get to the point where you're experienced like Danair and you'll say, let's just have a meal and be nice?
Yeah, maybe it will. But at the moment, I'm still only 26, and I'm still as feisty as ever.
Yeah. Great stuff, Ryan.
Well, listen, have a great Christmas, Ryan. Enjoy getting fat as briefly as that'll happen, and hopefully we'll see you back fighting fit sooner rather than later.
Thanks, Ryan.
Next one. Cheers.
Come on, Ryan. Thanks a million for that. It is a remarkable story to where he's got to, and you think that if anybody is equipped, at least with the mental capacity to make a comeback from this, then it is Ryan Burnett.
You would attest to that, but it's such a... After a loss, it lives with you for a long time. It will be tough for him. And I will actually going to reach out to him, and I'm hanging around a lot too, so I will spend some time with him. But like, you go from this building up for a fight in this pivotal moment that's going to be defined like the rest of your life almost. It does, because you live from fight to fight. You've got everyone around you, all that support group, all, you know, your team, your core. You go and you have this big fight, and if you lose, especially in the nature he did, and as he spoke there, you're kind of left on your own, and a lot of free time on your hands, and all you're left to ponder is, what if I had done this? What if I had done that? What if I had done this differently? How would I be now? It's a tough thing to get over mentally. But he can take a lot of solace in the fact that he hasn't, as I said, he hasn't gotten beat by a better boxer, and he can come back. And he's had a very quick rise, you know, especially the last 2 years. He's kind of gone from fighting journeyman to almost fighting, he's gone for the levels, the British level, the European level, and straight to world level. And he's had 3 hard fights at world level now. So a rest might be a blessing. This might be a blessing in disguise.
In the long run, that you can actually kind of let your body heal a bit.
He's only 26, and he trains extremely hard. So a little rest might do him good. All
right, good stuff. We're going to get Darren in to run through all of the day's sports news in just a moment. Here's a clip from last night's Monday Night Rugby. The question was posed, is Andy Farrell the right man for the job? Here's Matt Williams and Eddie O'Sullivan talking with Joe about it.
I do think it's been handled well. I think the question mark I've got, of course, is Andy Farrell's a lovely guy, a great D coach, but as Les Kiss will testify, a very similar profile to Andy. Les is a great guy, champion fella. I'm not talking them down, but when you haven't been the head coach of anything in rugby, you're both rugby league guys, you haven't been a head coach of any rugby at provincial level, and then going straight in as national coach, I think it's a very, very tough gig for Andy Farrell.
Yeah. How big a con is that for you, Eddie, regarding Farrell's appointment?
Yeah, it is. Look, it's a factor. Matt's right. You know, it's a very different world when you're assistant coach. When you're a head coach, you do get up on the high wire and there's no safety net. And the stuff that you deal in on day to day, like I would describe it as, you know, if you're an assistant coach, you're juggling 3 balls. If you're a head coach, you're juggling 10 balls. And that's a massive step up. Now, he's been around the camp for long enough to see how Joe Schmidt operates it, but he has to have his own stamp as well. He can't just replicate Joe Schmidt's way of doing things. He has to be his own way. Every coach wants to put his own stamp on how a team plays, how a team prepares. So he'll have seen it in operation, but there's nothing like being there and everything comes back to you. I mean, everything comes back to you. Every small detail is your responsibility. So that'll be a big test of him. But look, they must feel he's ready for it. I mean, there are a few, I've talked to him, the players have been around him. So obviously the feedback is that he's ready for this. But it's a pretty big gig to get first up as a head coach. But look, it's a year away or more, because the Six Nations won't start till 2020. But yeah, it is. Matt's right. It's a big change up for any coach to go from assistant to head coach. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, okay, we'll talk a bit more about that. First out, here's Darren.
Morning, Ger. Stephen Kenny, of course, dominated the discourse this morning, but the what-ifs were the big talking point when he met the media for the first time as under-21 manager, stroke soon-to-be senior manager yesterday. What if Mick qualifies? What if Mick does well? What if Mick wants to keep the job? What if Stephen doesn't do well? These questions all put to Kenny yesterday at the Aviva Stadium, and he pointed out how futile they were as the decisions have already been made.
It's already been decided. The decisions have already been made. You know, I think if Mick gets Ireland to the Euros and performs well, I'll be absolutely delighted. It's a great scenario to have, because you're taking over a team, playing with confidence. It's great for Mick because it'd be a massive achievement for him and to do that again. And, you know, his stock will be absolutely really high, and it'd be great for him and great for the country. And, you know, I view that as a real... That's only good news, you know, that would only be good news.
Is that part of your contract, or is it just you've been promised essentially that you'll be taken over in 2020?
Oh yeah, it's in August 2020. Yeah, I'm taking over, and that's been decided.
Whose sat-nav was it?
It was actually the guy who was asking the question. I'm not sure who it was, but the comedic timing of the sat-nav, just as Stephen Kenny finishes outlining his view for the future of Irish football, it says, "You've arrived," which I think was quite apt.
So you were there yesterday, right?
I was there yesterday, yeah.
What was it like?
I have a very positive impression of Kenny from following that Dundalk European Odyssey, the Europa League. I've always thought he's a real deep thinker. I like the way he approaches the game. When you talk to players who've played for him, they don't have strong feelings about, when people talk about like the likes of Mick, it seems to be he's a very affable guy, he's a very likeable guy. Kenny is seen as a guy who gets the best out of the players, and they mightn't love him as a human being, but they love what he does for them. They love the feelings that he gives them. They love how he makes them value themselves. I get a very, very positive reception from talking to players about Kenny, but it's never in the same way that players talk about Mick. They talk about Mick as being a really nice guy, a really funny guy, a really good guy around the camp, while Kenny is seen as a guy from his players that just brings the best out of them.
Yeah. A little bit of both would be nice, you know?
And we've got a little bit of both. I mean, you've got Kenny in 2 years' time. Just not together. I want to show people this article because it follows on from your conversation with Daniel Harris about sports people using their platform to try and bring about change. The article is doing the rounds on Twitter. It's Stephen Kenny from the year 2000, and those unfamiliar with the man, it gives a really interesting insight into his character. The line that sticks out: what's your dream job? Managing your country, he says. Outside of football, he notes eradicating homelessness. Kenny made a really impassioned speech about the plight of homeless people in Irish society earlier this month, while he was being named Premier Division Manager of the Year for the 5th time in 6 years.
Yeah.
So he uses his platform, like the conversation you guys had with Daniel Harris, to try and bring about positive change. He was also asked, what's the biggest rip-off in Ireland? This is going back to the year 2000. Kenny's a very, very young manager, just coming on the scene, but you can see that he's a really deep thinker, and he says the increasing divide between the rich and the poor really disturbs me. Now, this is just a run-of-the-mill 5 questions with a manager, tell us a little bit about yourself. But you get the sense from the guy in the local paper that he really has deep thoughts about life, about society, and there's much more to him. I think it might be the Star.
Yeah, sorry.
But Longford Town tweeted it earlier this week. But it gives a really good insight into people asking, who is Stephen Kenny? Because there's a sizable amount of the Irish sporting public who haven't taken any real interest in what he's done over the years. So he is very much an unknown quantity to them.
Yeah.
But as a human being, as a guy, I would be very, very positive about him, and I would feel that he has merited the chance to have a crack at it in 2 years' time.
But what if, Darren? What if we win the Euros?
Then Kenny takes over a team on an absolute crest of a wave.
But Mick has been shafted.
Mick hasn't been shafted because Mick agreed to leave in 2 years' time.
You don't like Mick?
No, I like Mick. I like Mick a lot, and I think he's a great guy to come in and steady the ship, and I hope he does a good job. But Mick has shook hands and he's agreed to what's been on offer, and I mean, it really does tick all the boxes. Mick gets his comeback, he gets a chance to right the wrongs. He was probably railroaded out too quick in 2002.
You can't just, like, he had the chance to right the wrongs by not doing the wrongs in the first place.
He was moved on very much. I don't think it was even results that got him the boot in 2002. It was probably the whiff of Saipan lingering. And the
results.
Well, what was it, 3 losses and after the first 3
We were
games?
out of that campaign straight away with like a brilliant team.
Yeah. So you don't think Mick should have got another crack?
Well, I just think that this whole kind of, poor Mick, I can't believe he has to leave this job after 2 years. It's like, what? I mean, we don't really want Mick for like forever.
He hasn't earned this job based on what he did 16 years ago. He earned it based on what he did at Wolves and what he did at Ipswich, which was getting the best on a very, very limited resource.
I don't know about that whole. I think let's wait and see how well Mick does, and this is the bed that everybody has chosen to lie in. It's going to be uncomfortable because there seems to be a lot of people in it, and we'll have to wait and see if they can all get along.
But the what ifs are so pessimistic. What if Stephen is terrible? What if Mick is terrible? What if Mick is great? I mean,
the best what ifs are the ones. What if we do really well in the Euros? I'm like, well, okay, let's just cross that bridge. Let's cross that shiny, glistening bridge when in our like Rolls Royce when it comes to look at this. We've got a highly performing team and this guy who we think is like the future of Irish football.
What if another what if? What if the under-21 team don't perform and not doing well?
You spoke to your doctor about this.
Yeah, and he actually touched on the fact that very little of the results will actually matter because at under 21 level they're still looking at player development, and Stephen will be judged not on results, because he touched on the fact Noel King wasn't judged on results. They've never qualified for the European Championships at under 21 level, so it's not about how many games you win or how many tournaments you qualify, or if you qualify for the first time ever. It'll be about how many players you are producing for the first team, the senior team. So that will be the metric of which
that's
is judged.
progressive. That's a good approach.
I think that for me the positives of this outweigh the negatives. The negatives are fairly obvious. Can grown men get on with each other and put their egos aside for long enough for the benefit of the country? Probably not, is what history tells you, generally, and not just specific to this sport, it's in every sport. But like maybe for the national interest, this can be made to work.
I mean, you can choose to be optimistic or you can choose to be pessimistic. This week I'm going to choose to be optimistic. I think that they've got 2 high-quality characters and they've got a plan for the next 4 years of Irish football, and that's much better than going from campaign to campaign and hoping for the best.
I broadly agree with that.
Okay. Jose Mourinho has told his Manchester United players if they're feeling the pressure to stay at home and watch the match tonight from the comfort of the couch. They return to Champions League action with a visit of young boys later, and United know a win will see them look to reach the last 16 with a game to spare, a feat they will achieve should they win and Valencia fail to beat Juventus. United winless in their last 3 Champions League home matches, 1 draw, 2 losses. They were also poor at the weekend in the game with Crystal Palace. Jose Mourinho has watched his side win only 3 games at home in 9 matches in all competitions this season. He has the rubbish suggestions that playing at Old Trafford has brought added pressure.
I refuse to say that. I think would be a lack of respect to the stadium and to the fans to say that we prefer to play away of home than to play at home. I totally refuse to say that. If you ask me, do I prefer to play tomorrow against young boys here, or if we could change the game and go again to Bern, I would say immediately I prefer to play at home. Always. I prefer always to play at home. If you feel pressure, stay at home. But when I say home, I don't say stadium home. I say home and watch on TV. If you feel pressure to play matches at home where the people come to support, come on. I never felt pressure to play at home.
Now, a huge crowd turned out at Sean McDermott Street in Dublin to welcome home Ireland's newest world champion, Kelly Harrington, last night. The Lord Mayor of Dublin, Neil Ring, said Dublin City Council have decided to set up a Kelly Harrington boxing fund to help support local clubs in the area. He also criticised the Minister for Sport, Shane Ross, for no showing the celebrations. He questioned, where's the Minister for Sport, pointing out that Ross had been there for the hockey and there for the Dubs as Jim Gavin's men won their 4th success of All-Ireland. The Lord Mayor wondered why he wasn't here in the North Inner City to celebrate Harrington's achievement. A spokesman for Mr Ross told the Irish Times that the invitation only arrived on Monday, so he couldn't come.
What?
I'm not sure when they expected the invitation to arrive, considering she'd only won it at the weekend.
He's voted demographic, Irish catchment.
That is mad. Sorry, we didn't get the invite. The dog ate my homework. Like, come on.
I mean, when was the invite going to arrive? I mean, it's of course
3 weeks.
Then you arrive back on Sunday.
On the off chance that Kelly Harrington might actually win this thing, might you be available to come? I mean, anyway. We'll talk about Kelly Harrington in a minute. Darren, good stuff. Thanks for that. Eddie O'Sullivan and Joe here talking about the wording of Joe Schmidt's statement and whether or not he is retiring completely from coaching.
It was curious, Eddie, I don't know if you saw the wording of the Joe Schmidt press release just before 9 a.m. this morning, and one of the lines he had was, I've decided to finish coaching and I'll prioritise my family commitments after the Rugby World Cup in 2019. It was a curious wording for sure that he didn't just say, I'll finish coaching Ireland. He said, I'll finish coaching and will prioritise family commitments after the Rugby World Cup in 2019. So it could be just, as I said, a curious wording, slight mistake. It was interesting, the New Zealand Herald have turned it into like front page story over there, and you know, Schmidt, All Blacks blow, he's retiring from coaching, full stop. I didn't quite read it that way. I mean, you certainly got the sense his hand could be twisted. He's talking about family commitments after the World Cup 2019. He's not talking about the next, 10, 20 years of his life.
No, I doubt it. Look, again, he's got to manage this because if he said he's going to look in other places for other opportunities, then, you know, the rumour mill will start. Yeah. And that's the last he needs now, a year out of a World Cup, to have all sorts of stuff floating around that he's going back to Claremont or he's going to the All Blacks, or, you know. So he's taking a break. No, I don't think he's been disingenuous. I think he probably is. As man said, it's a tough gig. There's non-stop. You play 10 games a year, and people think you work for 10 weeks. And you spend the other 40 getting ready for the 10 games.
Yeah, that's Eddie O'Sullivan and Joe last night speculating about what the future holds for Joe Schmidt. We've obviously heard from Ryan Burnett a little bit earlier on, but I'm glad to say Ray Moylette is here with us in studio, chatting away to Andy Lee. Ray, how are you doing? Good morning to you.
I'm great, Gerard. Thank you very much. All good.
I see you've come dressed for the occasion.
Well, that's it too. I just threw on the crank gear this morning, especially when I was meeting Andy, you know, a friend of mine, so it's good to support.
You were chatting to a good Mayo man outside there.
That's right, yeah, Kevin Kilbane, yeah. We actually got told to quieten down, we're interfering a small bit, but I met Kevin a few weeks ago in Mayo. He was down at an event on the Sea to Summit, and I met him for the first time down there. And we got a picture. I got it up online. So it's good to have Mayo men representing, I guess. Yeah.
Is Kilban here? It's this hour of the morning. What's going on?
Just popped in there.
Must be something wrong.
It was coming.
Yeah, holy moly. How are you getting on? Because this is a big couple of weeks for you now, right?
Yeah, so it is a big couple of weeks, but it's not any different. Like, I'm still preparing for a fight, but there's a couple of different factors that are coming to play with this, So it's a homecoming, which is my first time fighting at home in front of a big crowd, It's live on TG4, which is a good plug as well. And there's a top 15 world ranking at stake. So it's for the WBC international title. There's a lot of stuff that can happen after this, but in my head it's just another fight, just to prepare for that, get the weight down, make sure sparring is going well, and I need to try and keep composed as well, because at home there's a good buzz around town. We know how Mayo support is. They're getting on top of the bandwagon with like the footballers when it's time for Sam Maguire. They go mad in the countries or in the counties. So it's good that I'm up here in Dublin away from all that. And I go home the weekends, and I still get to feel it, experience it. But I still can't take my eye off the prize, which is December 7th, So that's the most important thing at the minute.
So what are you working on at the moment in terms of your strategy for the fight?
Yeah, so I'm working with Packy Collins here in Blanchardstown. This guy is a step up of what I'd be used to. He's a typical Mexican fighter. He's come forward. He's durable. He's tough. He's a boxer like myself, I think. He likes his single shots, and he's a bit flashy. I think he's the same attributes that I have, but I think I'm more powerful and I've quicker hands than him. And I think that'll come to play in the latter rounds. I think it'll be 50-50 for the first 4 or 5 rounds, whereas I think he's going to I'll wear him down, and I can maybe look good in the last 5. I haven't done 10 rounds yet. I've only done it in training, and it's completely different than a fight. So I'm looking forward to it. It's a challenge, and it's a test, and it's a step up. And this is, when I turned professional just 2 years ago, this is the fights I want to be put into.
What are you doing in training with Packy? What for this opponent specifically?
So Packy's actually, he's all the body bag on him and all the gear bag, and he's lying in on top of me, for basically keeping the pressure on me, because I can box. I'm a good counter puncher. I can box, I can move, and I'm nearly moving too much, for the pro ranks. For 10 rounds, I won't be able to move like that. So I will get into a position where I have to stand and I have to trade and I have to fight. And, that's inevitable. That's going to happen in the fight. So once I can prepare for that, I know that's coming. I need to work on that, because I'm boxing 20 years now at this stage, so the moving and the simpler stuff, it nearly comes natural to me now. So Packy is trying to drill in the fact to stand and sit on my punches, because I've good defense, so I'm able to trade with these guys. I don't need to be getting out of danger, because I'm good enough to be in that pocket. But it's frustrating for me. I think I can move all the time, because it's what I've known, but the professional game is, there's different tactics that come into play and different in a fight, and...
How long did it take you, Andy, to get used to that?
It takes, I think you're always learning, and it's probably the biggest adjustment you have to make, isn't it? The footwork, especially when you've been drilled in the Irish coaching system, because it's high, the footwork it's very emphasised, and it's high energy footwork, you're always on your toes and you're bouncing. And in the program, it's more about stepping. It's not about bouncing. I think there is a time to bounce, but it's more about stepping, and it's conditioning your legs for that, and also sitting low on your legs. It's a different thing. Where the amateur game, you're kind of upright, and your legs are almost straight, not vertical, but straight. Where in the program, you're almost sitting down into your legs, squatting, and that's a different conditioning as well.
Yeah, even. My trade.
Let me tell you, it's easier in the fight than it is in the sparring. The sparring is harder, because you'll have the energy of the crowd, you'll have your adrenaline pumping, and the rounds will be passing, and you won't even realise it.
Well, I'd say I'll realise it all right. But one of my main attributes as an amateur was I could hit and not get hit. So I was very good at single shots. A big flashy shot that had come from the back door, I could throw that. I was never really the aggressive.
One of the only Irishmen to win the European gold medal. Very hard medal to win. Very, very hard medal to win. Harder than a world medal, because every country you come up against are really good. And it's.
That's a while ago now, 2011. You know, I'm trying to.
But you were so unlucky coming the Olympic years and so many times, weren't you?
Yeah, I missed out on London by one fight for qualification out in Azerbaijan, and then Rio, it's beyond me how it didn't happen. You know, so I missed out with through the Irish selection, just two different decisions or whatever, and I got over that. But I was actually drafted in then to APB, which is amateur professional boxing, and I got an opportunity then to qualify through that rank, where the WSB and the APB fight. So they're two sort of professional bodies in amateur boxing that the amateur setup put in to stop amateur boxers going professional, because the best amateurs go professional and it leaves the amateur scene. So they want to try a middle of the road job. So that I actually got drafted into that, and there was 5 boxers in Venezuela, and the top 2 qualified, and there was an Armenian, a very good Armenian. He's better than me. He's probably still better than me, you know. And he was always the main threat. And then there was someone from Qatar. I think my mother would have bet the other 3, and I was the other 1. So and the top 2 qualified. And if you lost the first fight, you actually got another chance to fight. If you lost the second fight, you got another chance to fight. So we were just dependent on the draw, and the draw came out. I was fighting the number 1 seed, which was the Armenian. So the 2 of us were by far ahead of the pack. But it's just the way the draw worked, I missed out. You know, he stopped the next 2 opponents in the first round.
Venezuela qualified, there's a lot of questions about the decisions
that were made
I think the draws that were made there.
I think
there were a lot of...
One of the guys was from Qatar, and I think they invested heavily after that or before that, I'm not sure. He got the pass, but it was harder for me not to qualify that time than to actually qualify. You know, that's the way I look at it. So it wasn't meant to be
Wasn't there a point where you were thinking of walking away? You had to be kind of coaxed back?
There's a few of them points. There's a few of them points, yeah. Especially with boxing, you come up against a lot of barriers and walls that you come into. But one of the first times that I wanted to pack it in was in 2007. I was changing school. I was a 17-year-old, you know, as you do. And I was throwing the box. I was throwing the toys out of the pram, really. So I just threw it away. And after a couple of weeks, my uncle Richard Duffy and my coach now, Martin Brennan, he's a cousin of mine as well. My mother got onto them, said, "Talk to this fella." You know,
set him straight.
Come down and set him straight, yeah. Because I wasn't listening to the people closest to me. So they came down and they persuaded me just to stay on, that the World Championships were in a couple of months, just to try them, and then you can pack it in and see what happens. And then I actually went on in 2008, and I was the first Irish boxer ever to win a World Amateur title. Mayo, I think HL was before me. So I won that, and that sort of set the scene for myself then. Without choice, I was becoming a professional boxer then, because I was part of the high performance scene.
Yeah.
I was being funded, I was being told where I needed to be, what I had to do. So by the time...
Did you respond to that? Because some people do and some people don't.
Yeah, well, I did respond to it. I did, absolutely, because it came so fast. I had no choice to do it. And by the time I knew it, I was 21, 22, and that's all I knew. You know, I've been looked after in high performance.
The options weren't there,
and I had not that I had no options, and I'm delighted that I'm here now, you know, fighting at home in a couple of weeks' time. But I look back and I didn't choose this. It sort of just happened, because I wanted to walk away and I didn't get the opportunity to walk away, and then I came back a world champion. So it was sort of, I was thrown into the deep end then, you know. But again, I enjoyed it, you know, but it's something that it just happened, you know. So
Are you happy now, though, that you went through that to get to the point where, would you, in retrospect, would you prefer to go pro at 22 and be a 5-6 year vet now?
I don't think I had the discipline to go pro at 22, and let's be honest, you know, I probably took a lot of shortcuts in my career, you know, whereas now
in training, in
training and with everything, you know, mainly lifestyle. You know, it was because it was so foreign to be a professional athlete in down home where we're from. You know, it's not the done thing. So there was loads of loopholes and loads of shortcuts I could take because I wasn't being surveyed or observed as much as if I was living in the city. You know, so I could escape, and I probably did a little bit much. But to be the opportunity I have now, I wouldn't change any of that. You know, I wouldn't. There's nothing more that I would want now than what I'm doing at this moment in time. Like preparing for a massive fight at home in front of my own people, and that they're all behind me now. And the options that this will bring are endless. You know, I don't know what phone call can come on December 8th. You know, anything can happen. And like, I'm not living the normal 9-to-5 job. I'm getting phone calls every few weeks. Like, I got a phone call during the week there of Andy, you know, to come on to this. Like, that's exciting. You know, these are things that the average people, or the normal people working every day, don't get to experience. You know, so this is living the dream, really. This side of things. I know there's ups and downs in boxing, but surely the ups they're phenomenal. Like, you know, and you know that, you know, of ups and downs as well.
Yeah, it's the life less lived, isn't it?
Yeah.
You spoke about going home for this fight. How do you think you're going to handle the pressure? What are you doing to combat that, the expectancy?
Well, at the minute, I'm spending most of the time in Dublin to try and, because again, I took shortcuts and I did let things get to myself before. So, like, there's a lot of people clapping me on the back at home, you know, saying, well done, congratulations. But in reality, there's nothing done yet. You know, this is just another fight, and that's the way I have to look at it. But I still want to be able to enjoy it, you know, because most of my fights have been in Boston or been abroad. And I feel I didn't really get to experience the whole occasion. You know, this is entertainment at the end of the day. We're professional athletes, professional boxers, and we need bums on seats for it. And in order to do that, you have to be entertaining. So I'm not so caught up in the boxing scene. I'm still a showman, you know, and I need to be, but I can't get caught up in thinking I've won already, because I haven't. This is going to be my toughest fight to date, and I'll need to pull out all the stops, because
you must also feel a huge amount. You must feel very proud of yourself for bringing this fight and bringing, I guess, boxing back to Ireland. But in a way, you know, this boxing has been happening here, but this is a step up in terms of the opponent you're fighting and the card itself.
Like, I read an article in Irish Boxing last week, and they put it up, and it was...
What did you took me up on my comments?
Yeah, you commented. That's a couple of months
I said it was
ago
in the bin. You
yeah.
said, Andy,
you slated Irish Boxing. You said there's no big shows going to happen in the next 10 years, was it, or the next couple of years?
Be a long time.
That boxing in the Republic is in the bin and there's no back. And I challenged on it. I explained to you, Andy, this is an opportunity now for the people to get behind someone. And like, with all this turmoil and with professional boxing, the people of Ireland want to get behind someone. They want to support someone. They're hungry to support someone. And why can't it be me? You know what I mean? Not because it's me, but timing is perfect now for me. I'm coming at the right time when there's a gap in the market, I feel, and I think I can do it. And I know you were saying with big shows and all that, but this is coming to the article on Irish Boxing. They wrote that TG Cahir are going to... they're backing me more so than the boxing, and they're going to follow my journey, you know, and I enjoyed reading that. That's pressure that you can enjoy, that if I do well, then boxing will get more coverage and get more airtime and TV time, which means other boxers will get that. So realistically, I'm bringing boxing back to the forefront. Now again, I need to be performing, I need to be winning, but I like the thoughts of that, you know, so I'm very proud of that.
You want to be the torch
flag bearer, yeah, of course. Like, I like growing up, I always passing billboards and everything, and I often envision myself up on these billboards, you know, at home. And over the last couple of weeks now, it's become reality. My picture is up on the billboards. I'm on all the social media platforms. All the papers are covering me now. So, but I know this is only the beginning. But I've got great coverage in the past, and I've slipped at the final hurl. You know, like you mentioned there about the Olympics. I have been in good positions before and I've missed out. So I just feel the timing is right now, and everything that has happened up to this has geared me for this, you know. So I haven't taken any shortcuts, because I've learned over the years that doesn't work, you know, and my training has gone up a level. I'm coming down a weight than I actually have ever, than I fought in professional boxing, and I haven't made this weight since 2009. But I want to be competitive. Like, I could have
light welter or lightweight?
Lightweight, so it's 135. Yeah. So I know I could do well at 140 but I could only get to a level. I feel I'd be more competitive down at 135. So I'm making the adjustments now to make sure that everything is set that when we do start to move forward.
And going forward, say you win the fight, when you win the fight, where would you like to go? Who would you like to fight?
Like Lomachenko is the man in the weight, you know.
Did you ever fight him in the
I've
amateurs?
never fought him. I was in training camp with him in Ukraine. I was 60 or 64 at the time in kilos, and he was sparring welterweight, 69 kgs. You know, he wouldn't spar anyone within 2 weight categories of him, and that was good news for us. You know, I never had to jump in with him. I wasn't going to argue with any of the coaches, but the reality of the fact was there was 10 more Lomachenkos there as well. So we dodged one bullet, but you were put in against someone else. But you know, I see, like I was over sparring with Anthony Corralla a couple of weeks ago, and like he's a poster boy for lightweight boxing for a couple of years, you know, and I've always looked at these guys, you see on massive shows on Sky Sports, and you know, I've seen him fighting Ricky Burns maybe 2 years ago now, if I can remember back, but I always thought, I said, I could be there someday. You know, I'd like to see how far behind them guys am I. So, I actually went over and sparred Ricky Burns a year ago as well, so I'm putting feelers out everywhere to see where I am. You need to be tested against the best. And I went over with Anthony Corralla, and we sparred very well. He looked after me great, himself and Joe Gallagher.
The thing is, you see these guys on big shows and on a big platform, you tend to put them in a different bracket, don't you? Because they're on that platform. But actually in the gym, when it's just a two of you, you're on an even playing field.
And they're exactly the same as I am, you know. But if all goes well, he'll be fighting Lomachenko next year. I hope to get into camp again with Corralla. You know, I don't have any fight dates, I don't have any plans in the immediate future. But I'd like to get into that, because that's big-time boxing again. But if someone asked me to fight Lomachenko, absolutely, I'd jump across the table. I'd do it not because I think I could beat him, because I don't know can I yet, and I'm probably not experienced enough yet, and I don't know would I ever be experienced enough yet. But a punch always has a chance, and in the boxing ring, when the bell goes, you know, anything can happen. But to say you fought the best, and to be in against the best, and to be tested against the best on the biggest stage in the world, you've already won. Then you know what I mean. So like even people with Corralla, you know, they're not giving him much chance because it's Lomachenko, you know. But there's two guys in the ring fighting together, and anything can happen. And once you're on that biggest stage, that's what dreams are made of, really, you know.
Corralla is just looking at his record there. He's lost fights, right?
I think he's lost a lot of fights, and especially around midway through his, not even midway, but early and midway through his career. And he was kind of rid off, and then he kind of came back, and it's one of the very many good stories in boxing.
He's nearly too nice to be a boxer. He couldn't do enough for me when I was over there, thanking me for everything and looked after me well. And like himself and Joe Gallagher funded me to go over, you know. So they valued my sparring with him. I was obviously testing him, or he was getting the best out of it. I hope I wasn't a confidence builder, you know, and I don't think I was. But like I was over there, he was sparring Josh Warrington as well, you know, and I was jumping in and out. But now with Warrington, because he was the weight again below me. But you know, these guys, they're at the top level, but there's not much of a difference from where I'm at and where I'm climbing at.
Small things that separate the guys at the really high level to the guys who just be there, and it's about always improving and just learning all the time and doing those small things.
Like, but these guys are pros nearly 10 years now, you know what I mean? And there are little things that can pick up. You're in the clinches. He knew how to hold me, that he could get a breather, that I was tired. You know, he knew when to jump on me. He knew the test. I could take little bits of it, but I take a bit more time to be able to adjust it into my own game, you know, because sometimes, like if I think I need to throw a punch now, I won't throw the punch. It has to happen naturally and automatically. You know, it's nearly, you do things in the ring on instinct. You can't plan. You can't say, I'm going to throw a right hand now in a few minutes, or when he throws that left. It just happens.
But the only, like, one of the best ways you can make a huge improvement in a short period of time is by competing with people who are better than you.
Yeah.
And there's almost that mirroring that you do kind of on a neurological level. If you're seeing something in front of you that you don't even think about it, you're seeing him moving like this, moving like that, and he's throwing a jab, and all of a sudden you're doing the same movement.
Yes.
You know, You know, you often seen it. If you ever watch an opponent that you're studying to fight, you end up fighting just like him.
You nearly do the same mistakes.
Yeah, because you're watching so much, and you learn, like, you take in more with your eye without being told. You know, sometimes you can be told a million things, but you have to experience it to truly learn it.
Yeah.
The difficulty with that is, though, to experience that properly in a fight environment, you have to fight.
Yeah, but that's why sparring is the.
Yeah, like, so even when I'm sparring here, I'm sparring featherweights, welterweights, you know, so I'm jumping in with the featherweights, or the welterweights early, so they're rough and tough and manhandling me, you know what I mean? So they're physically wearing me down. And then in the last couple of rounds, then there's featherweights jumping in, that's all fast and speed. So my training has to be adjusted to that, you know, so that's the level we're trying to hit. And as well, Stephen Ormond as well, like, he's just a total pressure fighter, you know, so it's tactically, I'm hitting all angles, you know, so I've sparred the heavier, the lighter guys, and the typical pro boxer and the slugger, you know, so I've been in against them all. So hopefully, and again, you know, I've done this my whole life, you know, so there's nothing really foreign, and there's nothing that Orasqueta can do on December 7th that I think that I haven't seen before. You know, if I do need to adjust, I need to worry about myself, you know, and make sure I don't make any mistakes on the night, because, you know, with the 8-ounce gloves, anything can happen. You know,
it's 10-round fight?
Yeah, 10 rounds. So, like, it's a half an hour in 10 3-minute rounds to be able. You have to concentrate, because this guy, I could be beating him 5 or 6 rounds to 0, and he just needs one shot. You know, and if he knows I'm outclassing him and I'm a better boxer, he will wait to get that good shot. He doesn't need to be competing with me. Or try and match me if I'm way ahead on the scorecards. He just needs to pick his shot 10 seconds in a round, you know. So, whereas in amateur boxing, if you're beating a guy, he has no time to pick that shot. Plus, you're not going to tire as quick. But so you can't get complacent in the ring, you know. And Packy is always driving that onto me. You know, I learned a serious lesson with my second professional fight in Boston. Was against Matt Probin. It was in the House of Blues, first fight under Murphy's boxing banner, and I actually dropped him in the first round with a bad left hook, more or less. It wasn't great, and it was a flashy enough knockdown, so there was no damage done. But in my head, that he was knocked down, he was hurt, I was going to just take him out. And I actually jumped on him, and I tried to take him out, and I ended up gassing out. And I didn't take him out because he wasn't hurt, and I ended up losing the second round because I was tired and I gassed up. So that was a valuable lesson to learn so early in my career. You know, I thought, well, if someone hits the ground, they're gone, but they were not gone. So I learned an awful lot to pace myself.
Who's plotting the background stuff for you? Who's your management team?
Yeah, so Assassin Boxing and Assassin Promotions. So I linked up with them. I talked to a few managers and a few promoters, and before I turned pro, and I didn't really get the warm welcoming I was looking for. You know, I thought I had a good amateur background, but I knew I missed out on the Olympics. So, but I thought I would have been more inviting coming to these promoters or managers. You know, but I wasn't, and I felt that. And I went to Brighton over to Kaz of Assassin, and I met him for a cup of tea, and very warm, welcoming. Couldn't do enough for me. We put a plan on the table, and he literally agreed to it there and then. But I came back, so I came with things that I wanted to do. You know, I came with an agenda, and when he agreed to them straight away, I took a step back. I wondered what I wanted. You know, I was looking for bargaining power. Yeah. But so he agreed to it straight away. And what I took from the first meeting with him was he was fairly new to the game, but he was ambitious and he was hungry. So he was constantly trying to make new contacts. He was constantly trying to get to the next level. I hoped I'd be one of the main boxers in his stable, which I was. So when I signed over, I was the main boxer in the stable at the time, and so all his work at that time was geared towards about looking after me. Yeah. Whereas if I jumped into Matchroom or I jumped into some of the other stables with hundreds of boxers, I would just be another number. Yeah. Whereas this guy needed me as much as I needed him. Startup. Yeah. So that's basically I enjoyed that too, but coming in at the top level like that, he looked after me so much. But I think now I've looked after him as well. You know, Assassin Boxing is the biggest promoters in Ireland at the minute. You know, so and they're getting TV time. You know, and I take a little bit of credit for that, even though obviously I can't take it all. But I feel we've helped each other because we're at the same level starting. So.
That's the side of the business that's the most difficult for the fighters to get their head around, because the rest of the time you're practicing and making sure that your body is ready to take severe punishment and inflict severe punishment, while at the same time your business brain has to be going, am I looking after all this stuff over here? Yeah. Are the tickets sorted? The TV rights, is that something I should be aware of? Like, who's getting paid? How is that all happening? That must be the hardest part of being a boxer.
It's treacherous, and for a lot of boxers, they bury their head in the sand. Because there's so much they have so much on their hands anyway, in terms of what you just mentioned, the training, preparing yourself mentally and physically, that you don't really want to be bothered with the business. You just have to trust that the people who are there are taking care of you, and it's a huge trust. But hopefully, you've got it in a legal contract that they're bound to do their job correctly. So, it's a tricky road to navigate.
Yeah. You need friends and you need help. Everyone needs to work together, and that has to be driven home. Like, I brought my amateur coach Martin Brennan on board with me, so he comes to all my camps and he comes everywhere with me, really. So he's sort of my spokesperson. If there's something that I'm not happy about, I'll make sure it goes to him, and he drives that back to management. And by the time it gets to management, it's sorted. You know, there's no other way it can happen, because...
Yeah. So Packy's your coach, but he's...
Packy's my trainer.
Trainer.
So, and Martin Brennan's just a very close friend of mine.
Conciliary is the...
More or less, yeah. And he gets all the dirty jobs, you know, that he used to ask who's getting paid, when are they getting it, you know, he used to make sure everything's on track.
Perfect.
He keeps my management and Packy all together, he keeps everyone together. And then, like...
Lets you be you.
Yes, I can just focus on my boxing. But at the minute now, so there's massive ticket sales going on at home at the minute, and my wife has taken the job, Sharon, she's taken the job of literally handling all the tickets, handling all the money, meeting people with tickets, getting them out. So
you know, from Eric Donovan was in talking to us about this, and it's like, you know, he's literally the night before fights driving around dropping tickets that people have bought.
Like, that's not practical, and there's no way I could do that. I'm not struggling at the weight, but there will be a point when I won't want to see anyone. And if someone's coming to buy a ticket off me, I have to be all smiles and happy, you know, and there's no way I could do that.
How's the weight going? Yeah, shut up.
Yeah, don't mention the war. But so she has taken that fully on board. I literally don't have to worry about anyone. There's people writing to me every day about tickets, and I just say, talk to Sharon, this is it, you know.
So you've got the team in place and the support structure.
Like, we come from a very local community, and everyone, I'd love to give them all free tickets if I could, you know, but it's just not possible. But if someone asks about the fight, I nearly feel obliged that I have to give them a free ticket, you know, and I'm the bad one, you know, I don't want to be that way. So I literally just, Sharon is the bad one, put her on to her, and she can do it. So she's doing the dirty work, and Martin Brennan's doing the dirty work, Packy Collins is training me, Kaz is looking after everything, and I just have to box.
Where's the fight and when?
So the fight is in the TF in Castlebar on December 7th. It's live on TG4 as well.
If people want tickets, there are tickets available.
There's tickets, yeah. Contact Sharon. Yeah, so literally on my social media you get all the tickets. I think you can get a few through Ticketmaster as well, but being honest, there's only like maybe 150 or 200 tickets left in total.
That's going to be great.
Of a 2,000 capacity, you know, so...
That's amazing.
And
that's the national stadium, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I didn't think... I was afraid of this fight, you know, because, as I said, my name was up on the banner, and if it wasn't successful, everyone could sort of go back to their own environment. But I would have to face up to this, you know, things in a small town village or a small area like Castlebar or Westport, if it didn't go well, I'd hear about it, you know, and it'd continue for a while. So I wanted to make sure everything was looked after before we actually announced the show. So I knew T.G. Carr was coming on board. I knew Roy Sheehan was going to be on the bill. You know, I didn't know Spike was going to be on it. That was a surprise for me, and a very good surprise. So he got that over the line, you know. So we had little jobs that we needed done before we actually said, right, put our name to that.
Yeah.
You know, so, but thankfully, 24 hours after the show was announced, I was I was in the exact position I needed to be. I was calm and relaxed. I knew it was going to work from then.
How is the weight going? What's the...
Yeah, so the weight is good. So with the WBC, there's 3 weigh-ins. Have you,
Yeah.
So there's a 30-day weigh-in where you can be no more than 10% over the weight.
Right.
And then there's a 7-day weigh-in, you can be no more than 7% over the weight. And then the actual weigh-in on the day before. The WBC brought this in for safety. The boxers can't be dropping a load of weight the week before a fight, which I would usually do. So it completely counteracts everything.
But it can be manipulated too, because there's enough weight. 10% is...
Yes, yeah.
What does 10% over 135?
So I'm going to go kilos now. I'm going to go kilos, that's all right. So 61.5 is the fighting weight.
Yeah.
And I had to weigh 67.5.
So that's a huge
3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I have to weigh 64.
How much work did you make? How much work did you have to do to get to 67?
I had to make a small bit. I didn't eat for one day.
But that's it.
Which
But then,
is
but then the next day you still have 30 days,
so
and you can go back up.
And after that, I was walking around 67.5, you know, for the next couple of days. So I have to make 64.4 on...
Saturday, is it?
No, this Thursday.
Okay.
So in 2 days' time. So I have about 1.5 kilos to go on that, you know, which will be water weight.
Yeah.
I'll come back to this weight that I'm walking around at, and I'll do the full cut the day before the weigh-in next week. But I think it'll have a small factor to play in this fight, because I haven't made this weight before.
And you're getting verified weights from your opponent in Mexico?
Yeah. He's been... I've got it. He was at the WBC office in Mexico.
Okay.
So he was actually there with that. But now, whether he was on the scales or not, I don't know. You know, that's the thing with boxing. But no, I trust. You know, you need trust in this game too. You have to...
You'll have to weigh in on the day.
Yes.
Either way.
So, and if he didn't make the weight, like... It's terrible for him. But this is an opportunity for him also. Like this WBC, it's a ranking title.
What's his record?
I think he's 17-4.
Yeah, so
but
he's a serious
fought,
fighter. Yeah.
He has fought 10 rounds. He's fought championship rounds before. You know, so and the WBC sanctioned this fight. They had to pick me and they had to pick him.
Well, look, to win 17 fights as a lightweight in Mexico, you have to be good.
Yeah, of course.
Trust
yeah.
me.
And he's been on the road a bit. I think he was in Canada. His manager, promoter is up there. But the top 15 ranking at stake, they don't give that out like to just anybody. You know, so if he wins it, he's worthy of winning it. He can't be in there just for the sake of it. And vice versa with me. If I win it, I'm worthy of being in there. Like for me, to get the criteria to fight for this, like the last person to fight for this in their 12th fight was Luke Campbell, you know, for the same belt and the same amount of fights as I have. You know, he was Olympic champion. So I'm at that level, but my management actually had to dig into my amateur pedigree. They had to take out the world title and the European title to use that as sacrifice, you know, to show my quality, because I didn't actually have enough criteria built up in my amateur career. Yeah. So that's how high of a level it is, you know. So it's going to be a 50-50 fight in my eyes, you know, but I think it's a fight that can make me look good as well. You know, the platform is there for the exposure, and people want to see a hard fight. They want to, like, one of my favourite fights is a fight in Connecticut where I actually got dropped in the second round, you know.
I remember
that's my favourite fight to look back on, because that showed that I have something else there, you know what I mean? And that was a close fight. I won on split decision. But that's probably one of the fights. If someone asked me to see a fight, that's the one I show them, because I could have went any way and I got hit, you know, and people want to see that.
Well, when the standard of opponent raises, so will yours, but because you have that background as a high-level amateur and a budding pro career, you'll tap into all that experience you have as an amateur, and your level will raise. Hopefully above him.
Yeah, well, hopefully above him, yeah.
It will do. It will.
Well, listen, we've tweeted the link out to the few remaining tickets. So they're
lovely.
Selling like hotcakes.
Well, that's it too, you know, but it's a good excuse. Like, the way that the Royal Theatre is set up, it's a concert hall, you know, it's designed. I was there at Pat Short a few years ago, you know, laughing up at him. I didn't think I'd be up on stage at some stage. But it's geared for an atmosphere, you know. It's 2,000 people. It's like not a coliseum, because it's all faced one way, but But like all the floor is gone, and there's only a handful of ringsides left. So there's a few at the tier. But no matter where you are there's no nosebleed seats. You know what I mean? They're all vantage points. So to be there, like, it's going to be a special occasion really for what's at stake, and hopefully this is the start of something new, you know what I mean, and something more.
And some big shows back in Ireland. And like,
well, that'd be great. Even despite Andy's comments,
I'll be delighted.
Good,
I'm getting them back on board.
The inspiration on the dressing room wall. That's like not a bad place to be.
Well, and in fairness, like, I've been looking up to Andy for years. Like in the amateur setup, I remember he was going to Athens 2004. And I was training with the schoolboys, you know, and he was just swanning in and out, and he was a big, you know, looking at him. Now I'm beside him here, and then in the pro ranks, to become a world champion, like, so now he's the next level again. And as well, when I started going out actually with my girlfriend Sharon at the time, her favourite boxer was Andy Lee, you know, and
there you go.
And then like
someday you might be sitting here.
I was in competition with Andy for a long time, but I was her favourite boxer, but he was her favourite professional boxer. So now I'm professional. I haven't asked the question.
I'm retired now.
You're retired. Okay,
yeah,
well I might get the nod.
Oh, very good. Well, listen, best of luck with it. And thanks very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me and Andy.
No, definitely. That. And it does sound like it's going to be an amazing occasion. So tickets are still available for the Royal Theatre in Castlebar on December the 7th. And if you can't get tickets or head along, it will be live on TG Car as well, which is a great thing as well, that TG Car have been committed to boxing at all levels, amateur and pro. And even the fact that Roy Sheehan is on that bill is interesting, that like even there was all the difficulty afterwards in terms of him getting paid, but at least there is going to be an opportunity for him, and you guys are part of that too, so that's good to hear. One quick video before we talk about Wilder and Fury. Here's Kev and Joe talking about a possible can of worms in the FAI succession plan last night. Have a look.
I think if Mick did well at the Euros, then he would I would be convinced, to take the job forward going to a World Cup. Of course he'd want to lead the side into a World Cup, which is difficult in itself anyway. We know it's difficult to get to a World Cup with the amount of places. So it seems strange to me that Mick has agreed to do it, that it's only essentially, it could be a year, couldn't it? It could be a year's job for him if and when, however it works out. So surprised, very, very surprised at it all. Very, very surprised the way it unfolded. We spoke last week, and we said, look, both managers would be very, very good, and all of a sudden the two names are catapulted in there, and they've both got the job essentially. It's a difficult scenario, difficult position, I think, for both he and Kenny, I think, with this one.
Yeah.
It is. That's the way.
How much of a dream scenario is it if, just to use your phrase there, if they get to the Euros and things go very well and there's a brilliant chemistry between Mick and the players?
Yeah.
How much of a dream scenario is it then if we have to say, well, that's now ending, and we're going to hope that the next man in, Stephen Kenny, is going to pick up where Mick left off, and you've got players around the time of the Euros doing the odd interview, and what will they be asked in every interview?
Well,
would they be asked, would you like Mick to stay? And several of them will come out and say, yeah, to be honest, I would. And so the key point is this: why in any governance, when you're planning out strategy, would you limit your options? Like, that is the first question Don DeLeo needs to be asked here. You have, in a sport where a month is a long time, 90 minutes is a long time. Look at O'Neill pre and post the 5-1 defeat to Denmark. Why would you limit your options?
All right, if you want to get in touch with us, you can drop us a comment on whatever stream you're watching this. A reminder, of course, that OTB AM is live with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 trade products, quality trade products. Let me just move on. We're going to talk about the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder fight. Ray, stay with us. You've obviously been doing a lot of research on this. At one point, were you going to be involved with one of the camps?
I thought, well, I was asked. Tyson was texting, we text each other every now and then. He said, do you want to come over and help me with the camp? And it was a great offer, and I would have loved to have done it, but I had the book coming out, and I told him I had to stay here for a couple of weeks into November, and I might be able to come over for the last week or two of the camp. But
what would you have been doing?
Just advising him or helping him with his training and watching his sparring.
You wouldn't have been getting into?
No, I don't think so. Those days are well and gone. But I've been in touch with him a little bit, texting him, just seeing how his training was going. It seems like he's in a good place, and that he no longer required me there.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to force myself. And I thought coming in with 2 weeks, it'd be too late to affect any change. It would be more disruption than anything, so I just left it alone.
Does that happen a lot?
Well, I didn't ask him why he wanted me there, but I was obviously it was nice to be asked to go there.
Would you have asked people in the build-up to camps to come in
from an outside perspective? Yeah, sometimes. I'm not really from a boxing point of view, just to have somebody there just to bounce off of and to relieve some pressure sometimes. But I looked at Tyson's camp. This is his third fight with his new coach Ben Davison, but it's really his first fight because of his last two performances or fights. They were exhibitions. They were fights officially, but they weren't really competitive. This is a real fight that he has on his hands, and I felt he might have been reaching out to me to get a little bit more knowledge, or a little bit somebody who knows the fight game a little bit more. I don't know Ben Davison. He seems like a smart, intelligent young man, but there's nothing that can outweigh experience when it comes to boxing. Interestingly enough, since then they brought in Freddie Roach into the camp,
right,
which is probably going to fill that void. And Ricky Hatton's has been with him for his last two fights, so he will have that element of experience of being there, as well as having this young, enthusiastic coach.
What's Freddie doing then?
It's only been the last couple of weeks.
Right.
Tyson was preparing in Big Bear. Apparently the altitude didn't suit him, and so he asked to use Freddie Roach's gym. And then he asked him would he be in the corner, probably for the same reason he asked me to be around and why he's asked Ricky Hatton, just to have that experience, because the fight, so much can happen in a fight, and the only man that can influence the fight is outside the referee, is the guy who's in your corner. And to trust somebody who's never been in that position before, like Ben Davison, it's a big ask. It's a big leap to take, you know. But not saying that he won't be able to handle the occasion, Ben Davison. But if something may happen, he'll have Freddie Roach and Ricky Hatton there in the background. And Freddie Roach has said that he'll just simply talk to Ben Davison while the fight's going on, and if Ben Davison wants to relay that to Tyson Fury, then he can. But Ben Davison will be the only voice. And it's interesting enough because Deontay Wilder in his corner, he has a guy named Jay Diaz, and he's been very prominent in the promotion of this fight in terms of the previews and all that. But for a long time, and the guy who would have done the hands-on training with him was a guy called Mark Breland, who's an Olympic champion, former Olympic champion and a former light middleweight champion of the world, and a very experienced man. So both seem to have this element of lead trainers who are inexperienced, but in the background, a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge.
Yeah. I hope this fight is a classic, and so that we get to see them both fight Joshua over a period of time, and that this is the birth of the heavyweight division having loads of contenders who fight each other over the next couple of years, because it feels like we might be on the verge of that.
Yeah, this is a fight for everyone. You know, everyone loves heavyweight boxing. You know, most of the old people in my village, they talk about Ali and Tyson. You know, heavyweight boxing brings this aura with it. You know, it doesn't. But these are two of the biggest guys in heavyweight boxing, two of the biggest names, and it's good that they're fighting each other, because boxers for so long have avoided the best fights, the top fights, you know, like Mayweather and Pacquiao. You know, they avoided that until it was too late. It's good to see these guys mixing it in together, because I know there are different organisations and all that, but there's too many organisations now that everyone can avoid everyone if they need to be, or if they need to. So this is a fight, I think, that for the public, you know, this is it doesn't, the winner or the loser here doesn't matter. They've made it already, you know what I mean? But it's good to see boxing putting on the big fights again.
It's an exciting fight in terms of anything can happen. You know, there's two huge guys. One has probably got the most devastating right hand. It could be one of the most devastating right hands in the history of heavyweight boxing, Deontay Wilder. He's knocked out 39 of 40 opponents. Like, that's serious going. And I know a lot of those fights were against guys he was just learning his trade against. Yeah. But you still have to knock them out.
You still have to hit them clean.
Yeah, you still have to knock them out. And it takes a tremendous amount of power to knock out a man with one punch. You know,
so. Looking at Wilder, like, his footwork is all wrong, his body weight, the way he transfers his body weight is not all wrong, but it's not. But that's his strength.
Yeah. That's his strength. He's so unorthodox
and unpredictable.
Yeah, and you'll know yourself, when you spar a novice, they'll hit you more they'll hit you more, they'll land more punches than a seasoned boxer, because
they do things they're not meant to do.
Yeah, and you're not ready to you don't expect them. But both guys are unorthodox. Tyson Fury he's not a normal heavyweight. He's an outstanding heavyweight, but he fights like a middleweight in a 6'9" frame.
Yeah.
And he can do things that no other heavyweight can do in terms of his ability to throw a variety of punches and move the way he does, and his head movement and his elusiveness. Like, this fight could go any way. It could be a knockout for Wilder at any stage. It could be a knockout for Fury too, but it could be a 12-round shutout for Fury, because he's such a good boxer. And if he's on his game, he might totally outclass Wilder. Yeah. It could be a very boring fight, or it could be an absolute classic where they just tear into each other. And that's that's the excitement of a big heavyweight fight.
One last question. Anthony Joshua, obviously, this part of the world has been hyped, and rightly so. He's been involved in a classic fight. And part of me wonders if we've overrated what he's done. And that's a heavyweight champion of the world on his way to unifying the belts. So it's hard to overrate. It's been brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But at the same time, like, he hasn't fought these two guys yet, and they're at his level. The big fights that he's taken have been people who are on their way down, or people who are he's fighting down to their level.
Well, Anthony Joshua's good for boxing, I feel. He's a role model, and he's someone that kids can look up to. He's the face of boxing this side of the world anyway. He lives a good life now, and he keeps everything on track. I remember from the amateur days, his boxing skill was very limited. He came in at a late age. But he has massive power. His physique is unbelievable, and he obviously worked very hard at that. But his boxing ability isn't at Tyson Fury's, as I feel. Now, Wilder is a different kettle of fish. He's very unpredictable and powerful. But Joshua is the poster boy, really, and he's been promoted as that. But I don't know, does he beat any of them other two guys?
Yeah. Fury, if he's on song, is the best out of the bunch, you would say. But you could see ways they could all beat each other. They all have certain attributes and certain strengths where they could all beat each other, and all such huge men that one punch could change everything.
That's the definition of a golden age.
Yeah. And
Three best fighters in the world could all beat each other.
They just have to get it on now with each other. The fact that Anthony Joshua hasn't fought these guys yet will tell you something about where he is in terms of maybe it's his own self-belief, or the people who are making the decisions on his behalf, where they are and where they think he is in terms of his boxing. But you can't understate what he's done. He is the face of boxing. He's brought boxing back to the mainstream in the UK and in Ireland and in America too. His profile is growing.
Yeah.
But he needs to fight one of these guys. And we need to have a universal recognised heavyweight champion.
I've seen such a progression in his boxing ability in the last couple of years. Even when he beat Klitschko and in his last fight, like his boxing.
He wasn't getting it easy all against Povetkin, and he made a lot of adjustments there.
And Povetkin had all the amateur talent, and that you don't lose that. So he had good skill as well and good tactics. But Joshua, for me, has improved massively over the last year or 16 months. So he's progressing all the time.
That's a good sign. And in fairness, like, that's not somebody who's just resting on their laurels, taking the easy fight. So hopefully the big fights are to come. But enjoy the trip. Sounds like it's going to be a cracker.
Yep. Hopefully make it up to Castlebar and see this man win the title after it.
Yeah, please God. Thanks, Andy.
Ray, thanks for joining us today as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good stuff from Andy too this morning. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 7:45. Great show lined up on the radio this evening from 7 o'clock as well. Make sure you stay tuned to our social channels for more details on that. We'll see you tomorrow. Good luck.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.